Hello everyone and welcome to MJ Hobby Corner. I'm MJ and I will be your host in this video. So today I want to go do an overview of what I'm working on. This is a big project that I started, and I started it a little bit early. This was supposed to be for next year, but couldn't wait, and so I began to make it. Now this is mesh armies, how to make mesh armies. And before I even begin, I want to give full credit to TJL Games. They have a wonderful tutorial on their YouTube channel on how to make the little soldiers, which is what gave me the idea for this fantastic project. It's a great material to use, and we are talking about the plastic mesh used in stitching to make vehicles, soldiers, artillery, whatever you want. I will be working on 3 different themes: fantasy, sci-fi, and steampunk, probably. So I want to give full credit to TJL Games, because really without the mesh idea, these fantastic things wouldn't have been possible. Okay, so go check out his channel. He has a very good tutorial. I won't be going over how to make the soldiers per se. All I'm going to do in this video is show how I modified the technique and how I'm expanding the technique to include a variety of different armies for different time periods. And all of this stuff will focus on fantasy or sci-fi. Okay, so let's start, because I have a lot to show you. So here are the adhesives. I recommend using a gun like this one, which has a very small, thin tip. And you will be using tiny beads of glue. This is what I use for my figures. It's very fast and it works well even at such a size. Now, tacky glue and super glue are another pair of adhesives that I like to use a lot, and it works well for these small figures. So let's just go over some of the tools for the mesh project. I have my little lighter here, and this is only done to very quickly eliminate spider webbing, since I use the hot glue to attach my little rifles to the figures. So sometimes you do get that spider webbing, and the lighter is very effective at removing it. Tweezers are very important, and you're going to see why in just a minute. Here's another set of tweezers. These are cuticle tweezers from Beauty Aids, and I found these real cheap. A little bit of crazy glue. I don't use it a lot, but yes, it is helpful at times, in combination with a little bit of white tacky glue. That also helps the models come out a little bit cleaner, and they're used actually in certain details like helmets and stuff. Pliers, a cutting knife, and a X-Acto blade, very important. And I do use scissors, and part of the reason is that my hands really hurt, and so putting pressure on the blade is really tough on my hands. So the scissors do help me out a lot. And of course, your mesh grid for the 6mm figures. Okay, so here are the 2 armies, and I have humans on one side, orcs on the other. And for this, these armies, I decided on a musket theme or black powder theme. I've always wanted to play fantasy armies in this kind of like black powder age. So here we have humans. This is what I'm calling humans. And you can see I added the muskets. That is one of the modifications that I've done to these builds. Added a firing line in the front rank, and then the rear line with muskets still on shoulder. I also added to some of them. Here is an artillery piece. So it is very possible to make artillery pieces. We have cavalry, and I'm still experimenting with cavalry, but this is a human cavalry. And we also have heroes or generals. I differentiate them by putting a little cape on them, numbers of troops on bases, and these could be formed into different formations. So it's kind of nice to have these. And these are all made with mesh, and the flags are made with index card. So mounted rifles on wolves. These are more disciplined, more elite troops. A wolf-like form. Add a little hot glue to thicken some of the areas, and then I lower down the head a little bit to give it a more skulking look. I made these smaller by cutting the mesh as small as I can. And so by making smaller troops, we can call these goblins, and these are goblin militia. Okay, and here is an example of a modular rank and file with just 3 figures. And you can see with this unpainted form how I position the front rank so that they look like they're shooting. Okay, I have to switch the position, and they are individual models. And then the rear rank are all together. Okay, you can see a hat, the little gold bead on the center figure there. So maybe he's a sergeant. Okay, let's go over very quickly what I did for the muskets. So for my rifles and muskets, I'm using this wire. I bought this at Walmart in the craft section. This is probably for beading necklaces and stuff. And a lot of the materials that you'll see here, that's what this is, okay? So there is black, and I don't have any black. Black would be perfect for this kind of task, but we work with what we have. So I cut a tiny piece of wire, and I do this all by eye, and then shave a little tip off of it with my X-Acto blade to cut off the rubber and expose my wire. I like my rifles like that. I think it gives it a little bit more interest. Now, okay, so I then use my pliers and attach the wire to the shooting figures. And I like my muskets long, so and I do it by eye. When I cut one wire, I cut the rest by kind of comparing it to the others. And then this figure is glued to the front rank facing forward. And we can kind of play a little bit with the poses by just moving the wire up or down. A piece of wire and then glue it right to one of the arms here. In many cases, I won't cut these arms the way you would normally, in order that I fit the wire comfortably so that the muskets look like they're being carried by the shoulders. Now the wire is about an inch long. You can make them a little bit longer or shorter, however, whatever the needs of the unit are. And once I've folded the little rectangular part, there's white glue in there. I just kind of fold the flag a little bit to give it a little motion. And there we go. Now this is usually glued to the end of one rank. Once this has been glued to the base, I can then glue the flag. Usually behind the arm, kind of looks good. And I use very, very little hot glue. All right, so once I begin a rank, I will work on it until it's finished, keep going down the line, and then this will make another small modular rank that after flocking will look like this. And some will not have flags, others will. And that's it. Now I'm using cardboard, so I have to actually use a little bit of hot glue on the open area there. And again, that's because cardboard is so cheap, it's so common. But if you really want to, you can use nice little wooden bases, which would make excellent mounts for these figures. Here's a larger rank for orcs. And I differentiate them by, of course, orcs and goblins will have the green skins, and that helps me differentiate them. But these can also be labeled if we really wanted to. Artillery pieces are very important in this project, and I have quite a few variety of artillery pieces using a combination of mesh and cocktail sticks. And for larger pieces of artillery, I use barbecue sticks which are thicker. Now you will notice a little glass bead right in the back there, okay? That gives the cannon a nice little detail. I'll show you how I do that. That is very tricky. You can use tweezers and just add a little dab of glue and then place your thing. But even easier than that, the glass beads that I'm talking about, these are very, very small. And I use them for a variety of different things. They're glass seed beads in the craft section of Walmart where you make necklaces. These are there, and they're inexpensive. You get quite a few beads. So this will be more than enough for a variety of projects. There is my tiny little glass bead. I make sure that the hole is facing up, and I put them on index cards, not cardboard. Index cards are better because then I can fold it up and pour it back into the container so there's no waste. Now the next thing is I add a little bit of glue to my tip, and I simply put it down, grab it, and there it is. Now if it needs straightening or whatever, I use my tweezers and straighten it up, and then I cut the length of my barrel once it's dried, and that gives you that little rear knob of the cannon. To put helmets on guys, I do the exact same thing and just dip my guy on there and then straighten it out. Requires a little bit of straightening to put the helmets on the guys. To make this wheeled artillery piece, I simply use brass paper fasteners. They make good wheels, and what I do is I cut the lengthy part of the brass paper fastener and cut it by eye so that I can form a dumbbell. Now these clips open up, and so what I do is I insert one end into one end of the other, and so I form this little dumbbell shape. And then once finished, I may need to straighten this a little bit because the wheels do get bent out of shape a little bit. To flatten this piece a little bit with pliers. Okay, and put it aside for now in order to make the gun. Now, in order to make the proper cuts, and especially when working with cavalry or strange creatures or anything, I mark my grid with a magic marker, and I mark everywhere that I want to cut. So this is roughly the shape that I want for the mount of the gun. So this is the shape that I cut, and this is about 3 little squares long. And that's the wonderful thing about working with this, is that you're working with a grid, so you can just count how many squares length you need for every piece and then trim accordingly. Now I'm going to say that this is the part that anchors to the dumbbells, so I'm going to bend this now with my needle nose pliers. And yeah, needle nose pliers are definitely very useful so that I get this configuration. And I think you see where I'm going with this. Then you just place it right in there. Now I'm going to have to trim these upper ends because I want the gun lower. And here is my little piece of cocktail stick, and I'm using a cocktail stick for this particular kind of field gun. I just add a little bit of hot glue to the trimmed pieces here and just attach it. And then I immediately glue them right to their base, and I cut out the little crew and make the crews. Now for this gun, this is a whole different animal. This one has 2 pieces. It has the small chassis that you see here. And then I leave 2 knobby ends long so that I can glue these little beads. These are flat beads that I find at Walmart again. And here are the beads, and these are flat and they have holes. They're perfect little wheels. And I bought this at the craft section of Walmart, right where all the beads are for making necklaces. That's a big theme here. And they make excellent little wheels. Now the chassis, the mount for the gun, is roughly a U-shaped mount. You can see it there, and I'll show the exact cuts in my document, Scratch Builder, that's coming up. And then you have the two long knobby ends where you can glue the little wheels. Now the next part is the mount for the gun itself, and that's another U-shaped piece that gets glued right to the top. And crazy glue works very well for these kinds of pieces. For my naval guns, I'm using the same idea, except the chassis is a little different, and this one has 4 wheels, and then there's a little tiny U-shaped piece that holds the actual gun. And so this makes a very naval-looking cannon, which I'm using as bombards as well for the orcs. And some of these I leave without a base, and that's so that I can mount them on walls, so fortifications and things like that. Terrain is very important, and I made this fort out of corrugated cardboard, and it's double-sided, and I will have a step-by-step in the Scratch Builder document, but you see the little ramparts here, and there is an upgrade to this fortification where you can see the guns there. And I made all the little guns. There are 5 guns that go on this. And then this is a regular wall. This is all modular. So now the important part is that we saw these guys. You see how their base is just colored black. There's no flocking powder. And they go nicely right on the wall there. And then I have a shooting component which goes right on the wall as well. And that's why I made the bases like that. You can see the little guys inside the tower as well, and they're shooting from the guard towers. So it's a neat little way of just representing, you know, fortified troops. And they're all there. I'm going to make more so that I can fill those walls with guys. And this is going to be a Siege on a Fort, which I always wanted to play and never really had the opportunity. So that's coming soon. So for a sci-fi-ish theme in a rough World War II type area, or a diesel punk type of theme, I began to make these walkers. Now these are done with as much simplicity in mind as I can, and again using the grid to measure out the legs. And so they all start like this and end up like this fella right here. So these are crawlers. That's what I call them, crawlers, and they have a variety of like weapons. They have mufflers there. There's 2 sets of mufflers. And so this piece would have some motion. And I have to base these and paint these. But this is one example. And then I have this one here, which is a little bit more boxy. And notice the detail on the legs, okay? And I'm using these little gems that, again, I bought at Walmart. And I will have pictures of them in Scratch Builder Monthly when I'm ready to write up this project. So I have quite a few chassis here ready. And let me show, here is one that has, I already started the, you can see the spider webbing there, which I'm going to remove in just a minute. That is a disadvantage of hot glue, by the way. And so it has the little support bars there, and I'm going to add another one down here. And then we add the joints which will be these little gems, and everything gets painted up. So here is another version. Now, many World War II vehicles were open topped, and this one's going to have an artillery piece with a couple of guys, and I'm just letting this dry a little bit before I go ahead and trim up the cardboard. And it's a strange little boxy crawler. So yeah, I will show how I make these. It is also possible to make half tracks. Here is the half track. This is done by using a combination of the mesh and cardboard, and using the same technique that we used for the cannon. Also produces chassis for armored cars. And so I'm going to be making a variety of armored cars, and these have to be painted. And so we'll have a force of crawlers and other armored vehicles to support them. Here's a 6-legged one that I'm going to be making. And the rest are all 4-legged quadruped crawlers with a spider-like look to them. So like spider tanks. And this project is coming later. I just have all the chassis ready. But this I'm going to develop later in next year. And we'll have a number of different units, including new ways of making the little soldiers so they kind of fit this era. And that's all for today. I gave a good overview of how I make the artillery and how I modify the little troops. Scratch Builder monthly documents that are coming out specifically only for this project will have other units, things like bestial units for some of the fantasy armies that I'm creating. And we'll also show any other variants of artillery pieces that I make for some of the later genres. So I'm going to start with the Black Powder Age, and that'll be the next document. I'm going to show how I made the fort, and that'll be on Scratch Builder Monthly. And I sell these documents very, very inexpensively. So if you want to help support the channel, that is one way. If you want to help support the work, that is one way. And again, this is an interesting kind of building technique. And thanks again, folks. I will continue to experiment with this, and more updates as I learn more about this technique and devise other ways of doing things. Okay, there will also be full material and tool lists on these documents. So thank you very much, and we'll talk soon. I hope that you enjoyed this, and of course the next thing is to start some games. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a future video. Which games, how will I use these? That is also coming soon. Have a good one.